Elden Ring. It's the biggest game of 2022 so far, and for good reason. It is a monumental achievement by From Software. Now, some of you DMs out there might be inspired to run a game like Elden Ring. Now, I've ran a Dark Souls-based game before and have put a lot of hours into Elden Ring. So, with that background, here are 7 tips for DMs so they can run their very own Elden Ring-style Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition game. Firstly, we gotta limit healing. Part of the danger in the world of Elden Ring is the lack of healing. This is starkly contrasted with the exorbitant amount of healing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition gives to the players. So we have to limit healing a little bit, and here's how I do it. Firstly, we're getting rid of Healing Word in all ranged healing. They just provide too much healing at any distance. Now, in contrast, that means that all other healing would take an action. This would mimic the slow healing spells and other items that are present within From Software games. Well, I'm kinda lying when I say that all healing should be an action, because in reality, healing potions should take a bonus action. This is to help simulate chugging a crimson tear flask in the middle of combat. And in my previous Dark Souls game, I had it where healing potions refilled after a rest, and players could find upgrades to their healing potion. That way they could get more drinks from the healing potion before it ran out and they would have to wait for the potion to refill itself. Characters in From Software games are self-sufficient when it comes to healing. They have their Crimson Flask so they can heal in the middle of battle. It's just how many times they can heal, which is the problem. So by limiting healing and buffing healing potions in our Dungeons & Dragons game, we can simulate that effect. So let's move on to what we all think about when Dark Souls or Elden Ring or Bloodborne comes into our mind, the boss design. An Elden Ring game will live or die based on your boss monsters, and in turn, how you run boss-style combat. But Dark Souls and Elden Ring bosses have a unique feel to them, so we're going to try to mimic that a bit within the mechanics of Dungeons & Dragons. Number 1, we're going to get a better dodge action. In my previous Dark Souls campaign, the dodge action completely negated the first attack that a creature took against whatever PC was taking the dodge action. It then subsequently gave disadvantage on all attacks for that round. It added another layer of tactics on top of the game. Being able to guarantee the first attack missing opens up the dodge action mechanically, but this really loses its impact if we don't implement the second factor, which is having predictable aggro in boss fights. Players should be able to know who the boss is going to attack and be able to draw the boss's fire. A mechanic I wish I implemented was having the boss's first attack always be against the creature that last damaged them, because this allows the tanks to, well, tank. It allows players to drop back during boss fights. If a player character is in a lot of danger, they can drop back, not attack, and chug their healing potions and know that at least the first attack isn't coming for them. Rest of the attacks, I mean, that's up to you, but having a little bit of predictability goes a long way. And this helps with the third factor, and that is that you need high damage during these boss fights. Your boss monsters need to be doing 60 to 70% of a party member's total health per hit. Elden Ring bosses are hard, people know that. And the reason why Elden Ring bosses are hard is because they hit hard, so your bosses need to hit hard as well. But with this high damage, you have to use more smaller dice than larger ones. This will limit the variability of the damage so that you can calculate it out where you will not be one-shot killing your players. Because nothing is worse than your boss critting on an attack against a player character and then instantly killing them. No save. We can knock people unconscious, that's fine, but killing? No. And we'll get into more about killing later on, but we don't want this to be a high body count game. However, the last thing we need to discuss when it comes to bosses are multiple phases and health bars. Elden Ring and Soulsborne bosses are notorious for multiple phases, so split your boss's health in 2 occasionally. Now, don't overdo it with second phases, but also make sure your bosses feel unique. If you've been building up a boss for a while, consider giving it that second health bar. But here's a great game design tip: you can split the health bar without actually making a second phase, just by having 2 separate enemies in a boss fight. Just remember that these boss fights are probably going to be the heart and soul of your campaign, so you need to put a lot of time and attention into them. And if you haven't watched my video on enemy damage, watch it right here to help you craft these boss fights. However, let's move on to the world, and in this part let's talk about the sectioned off open worlds that are the calling card of From Software games. Now, what is a sectioned off open world? Well, Elden Ring technically has an open world, but not really. There are certain areas within the game that are blocked by progression. No spoilers, but you can't go everywhere at the start of the game. And even then, some areas are leveled for mid or late game. A player just trying to run into that area is gonna get slaughtered. Now, I'm not saying you have to do something that extreme, but before running your game, section off your game world into level distinct areas. Also, consider adding in map shortcuts that your players can find. This is a From Software classic and could work with a sectioned off open world. Maybe instead of having to roll on the random encounter table, they find this secret cave network that allows them to get from point A to point B. And this leads nicely into our next topic, having distinct regions in your map. From Software games usually contain visually and mechanically distinct areas. Some general ideas for these areas are the safe starting zone with a lot of secrets, the leveling hub and shrine where all the NPCs are. It's a place where you can buy new items, upgrade your items, etc. From Software also usually has the castle, the swamp, the ancient city, the final boss arena, the secret hidden area off the map. Just adding in areas with those archetypes is going to make your D&D game feel more like Elden Ring, especially if you add in a poisonous swamp, because players love poisonous swamps. But now that we're talking about the world, we should probably talk about world lore, specifically world lore through items and locations. From Software games have incredible stories shrouded in mystery. The world lore goes deep, but it's never explicitly told. There is no exposition dump. It's up to the players going through their games to figure out what's actually going on and piecing together this disparate information. And that's why the world should provide just as much lore as any NPC when you're running an Elden Ring style game. Items and place names should allow players to piece together a history of your world. So, while you know the history of your world, what the players know ought to be vague. Additionally, and this is very important, figuring out the world's history should give tangible and powerful benefits. I'm talking magic items, boss shortcuts, anything else that you can think of really. Figuring out the significance of some ruins or being able to figure out that there's a secret location underneath a previously explored dungeon are all possibilities. Just make sure the reward for figuring out your world history is more than just a pat on the back from you. And look, this goes without saying, but actually know your world lore. You don't need to have it all written down, although it's probably a good idea if you did, but it needs to be extensive enough to fill an open world. Is that a lot of heavy lifting? Yes. This goes against a lot of the advice many famous online DMs give when running a sandbox campaign. But I'm here to tell you, if you want to run a Dark Souls style game, you can't just start with the starting town. It requires more planning because you have to know how everything fits together. You have to seed the world with lore. Part of the feel of an Elden Ring game or a Dark Souls game or a Bloodborne game is the dense lore behind what the player is actually doing. Part of the fun of Elden Ring is coming across these locations that fill you in on the story of the world. And speaking of the story of the world, let's talk about one of the items that helps to tell the story of the world best, the Ashes of War. Ashes of War are a huge part of Elden Ring's design. These unique and equipable weapon abilities make for so much unique customization and choice within Elden Ring. So, essentially, put Ashes of War in your Elden Ring D&D campaign. Make weapon abilities findable in the world. Then allow your players to swap in and out these weapon abilities. So, something like a weapon being +2 would not be an Ash of War ability, but say something like the Flame Tongue Longsword, which can ignite its blade for 2d6 fire damage, that could be an Ash of War. The Ash of War would just be the Flame Tongue Ash of War. And of course, you can make up your own. But now let's move away from Ashes of War, and let's talk about leveling, specifically XP leveling and XP loss. Losing runes or souls is a big part of From Software games. When you die in the games, you lose your XP that you haven't put into levels. Now, this is how I did it in my Dark Souls campaign. You lost a certain amount of XP when you went unconscious, and a certain amount of XP when you failed a death save. It was able to preserve the feel of a Dark Souls or Elden Ring game, but it was not overly punishing. And look, this is a special side note, but I think it really needs to be said. If you're trying to run an Elden Ring campaign, don't make it overly deadly. Don't actively try and kill your players. Elden Ring is a great game, but some of its aspects do not translate to the tabletop RPG format. Things like Sites of Grace, or enemies that respawn after you kill them, do not work in the format. Trust me, I tried it, it did not work. This is a D&D game, and not a one-to-one translation. And really, with all the advice in this video, implement these ideas to the extent they work in your D&D campaign. Every table is, fortunately, different. But absolutely, do not go try to continuously kill your party with bosses. I know that there are some crazy fuckers out there who are going to unfortunately try to do that exact thing. But take it from me, for all of you who are still listening, do not try to punish your players with this insane difficulty. Make the game hard, yes, but Elden Ring is a certain type of game, and the players at your table might not want to be constantly beaten down every single session. Making the bosses hard is one thing, making it oppressively difficult at all times is another. Remember, you and your players are there to have fun. However, if you found a bunch of players that definitely want to participate in an Elden Ring style campaign, I would suggest this video right here. It's gonna help them make kick-ass backstories. Hopefully that tie into the world lore as well. And thank you all for entering the dungeon.